I shouldn't even be telling you this, but it's burned into me. The moment it started, the spark I didn't want, couldn't have, but couldn't forget. It was supposed to be nothing, just a favor. My best friend had asked me to drop off a set of tools at his girlfriend's place. A simple errand, nothing more. I was 22, restless, and secretly proud he trusted me enough to step into his private world. Her house sat at the edge of town, an old brick place with vines crawling up the windows. I remember the smell of rain still clinging to the air that afternoon, damp and alive. I rang the bell, expecting a rushed handoff. Instead, she opened the door. She wasn't what I expected. Late 40s, maybe, but the kind of woman whose presence filled the doorway before she even spoke. Confident, a little tired around the eyes, but striking. Her hair was tied back loosely, strands escaping as though she'd stopped caring halfway through. "You must be," she started, then smiled when I said my name. Her smile wasn't polite. It lingered like it had weight. Inside, the house felt warmer than it should. A half-empty coffee mug on the table, a book face down as if she'd been interrupted mid-thought. She moved like someone used to being watched, though no one was watching now. I handed her the tools. "He said you needed these." Her fingers brushed mine when she took them. Not intentional, not long, but enough for me to feel it. My hand twitched. I shoved it into my pocket. "Thank you," she said, softer now. Then, almost teasing, "He never remembers where he leaves things. You, though, dependable." I laughed, but it came out uneven. Dependable wasn't something I'd ever been called before. Not by someone like her. The silence after stretched, heavy and unbroken except for the ticking of a clock on the wall. I tried to fill it, asking about the book on the table. She glanced at it, shrugged, then gave me an answer that wasn't really an answer. That was the first imbalance. Me talking too much, her saying less, always leaving space for me to wonder what she really meant. She offered me coffee. I should have said no, but I didn't. The kitchen was small, clean, but lived in. I sat at the counter while she moved around, pouring, stirring, sliding a mug toward me with fingers that lingered a second longer than necessary. I told her a story, some nonsense about a professor I couldn't stand. She laughed, but her eyes stayed fixed on me longer than her smile did, like she was listening to something else underneath my words. When the laughter faded, the room felt too quiet. The clock ticked louder. The air between us changed. She leaned in, just enough that I noticed the faint scent of her perfume, something floral and tired, like it had been on her skin all day. "You know," she began, voice low, almost conspiratorial, "he'll never know you were here." I froze. My hand tightened around the coffee mug. I wasn't sure if she meant the tools, the coffee, or something else entirely. Then she smiled, small, private, like she just said too much. I should have laughed it off. I should have left. But I didn't. Because the way she looked at me in that moment, like she saw something in me no one else had ever bothered to see, was the kind of thing you don't walk away from. And that's where it started. The mug was still warm in my hands, but my palms were damp. She had already turned away, rinsing something in the sink, as though her words, "He'll never know," hadn't just cut the ground out from under me. I should have stood up, thanked her, left. But I stayed. "You seem nervous," she said without looking at me. Her voice wasn't accusing, just observant. I swallowed. "I'm not." But the words sounded thin, like paper tearing. When she finally turned, her eyes lingered. Too steady, too knowing. It wasn't just the age difference that made this dangerous. She belonged to someone I trusted. My friend. The guy who'd pulled me through late-night study sessions, who'd loaned me money when I couldn't make rent. And here I was, sitting in his girlfriend's kitchen, drinking coffee she had poured for me, trying not to memorize the way her wrist brushed against her hair as she tucked it back. I shouldn't have noticed, but I did. Her eyes softened suddenly, as if she could read the thought. Then she said something I didn't expect. "You remind me of me. Years ago." I frowned. What do you mean? She laughed, but it was small, brittle. Just restless. Always standing in the wrong doorway, never sure whether to step in or out. She shook her head. I wasted so much time there. The air between us shifted again. Heavier. I saw it then, the regret behind her confidence. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It made me want to say something honest in return, but the words stuck. Instead, I stared at the dark swirl in my coffee, pretending to find answers there. Her voice came softer. He doesn't see it, you know? Not really. I could be in this room all day, and he'd pass through like I was part of the furniture. That hit me harder than it should have. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to defend my friend, to argue she was wrong. But the other part, the louder part, wanted to stay in that silence with her, to let it stretch because it felt like she had just handed me something private, something fragile. I set the mug down. My hand shook just enough for the porcelain to click against the counter. She noticed. Her lips curved, but not into a smile. More like recognition. You don't have to go yet, she said. The words landed too close, too heavy. I leaned back slightly, forcing air into my lungs. I probably should. Her hand reached across the counter, resting lightly on my forearm. Just fingertips, but it burned through me all the same. Stay a little longer, she whispered, almost casual, though nothing about it felt casual at all. I stared at her hand on my arm. My pulse hammered in my ears. If I said yes, everything would change. Her hand on my arm was still there, light but impossible to ignore. I tried to breathe evenly, but the air in her kitchen felt too tight. I shouldn't, I said, though my voice cracked in the middle of the word. Her gaze didn't waver. I didn't ask you to. The corners of her mouth lifted. Not a smile, not entirely. More like a test. I looked away, fixing on the window above the sink, where rain had begun to tap softly against the glass. It gave me something else to listen to, something besides my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. Does he know you talk like this? I asked before I could stop myself. Her hand withdrew slowly, almost deliberate, leaving the faintest trail of heat on my skin. She leaned back, folding her arms. No, he doesn't know a lot of things. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush me. I wanted to laugh, to cut the tension, but my throat wouldn't work. Then, mercifully or cruelly, her phone buzzed on the counter. We both jumped. She reached for it quickly, but I caught a glimpse of the caller ID before she flipped it over face down. His name. My friend's name. Her hand hovered over the phone until it stopped vibrating. She exhaled through her nose, steadying herself. Then she looked at me again, her voice low. See? He'll never know. The words echoed the way they had before, but this time they shook me differently. Not as a tease, but as a confession. I should go, I whispered, though I stayed planted in my chair. Do you want to? She asked softly. That question cut deeper than anything else, because the answer was no, and she knew it. Her eyes searched mine, and for a second, I thought she might close the space between us. Instead, she reached across the counter again, but this time, her fingertips brushed a crumb near my mug, slow and deliberate. So close to my hand I could feel the air shift. I clenched my fist. This isn't. The words broke off. I didn't know what it wasn't. Wrong? Safe? Real? Her laugh came out tired, almost bitter. You're honest to a fault. That's why I... She trailed off, catching herself, biting her lip. Why you what? I asked before I could stop myself. The question hung there like a live wire. Another knock shattered the moment. Sharp, sudden, at the front door. We both froze. She pressed a hand to her chest, listening. I swallowed hard, my pulse racing. Probably just a delivery, she said after a beat, but her voice was unsteady. Neither of us moved. The knock came again, firmer this time. Her eyes flicked to me wide, uncertain. And for the first time I realized she wasn't just dangerous to me. She was scared too. I stood slowly, every nerve alive, caught between leaving and staying. The knocking stopped. Silence swallowed the room. Her eyes found mine again. And in that silence, standing so close I could smell the faint trace of her perfume. It felt like the next move would break everything. The silence after the knocking faded was unbearable. I was still standing, caught between the counter and the door, between leaving and staying. She was the one who finally spoke. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Her voice was steady, but her fingers fidgeted against the edge of the counter, tracing invisible lines. For the first time I saw past the poise, the cracks showing through. "I shouldn't be here," I said. My throat was tight, but the words pushed out anyway. "Not like this." She tilted her head, studying me. "And yet you are." That truth sat heavy in the room. I ran a hand through my hair, laughing nervously. "He's my friend. You're his." Her expression shifted. Something in her eyes darkened, and her voice dropped low. "Do you think I don't know that?" The words weren't angry, but they were sharp enough to cut. I froze, and in that stillness, I caught it. The hurt beneath her tone, the exhaustion, the unspoken truth that maybe she wasn't as much his as everyone thought. She exhaled, looking away, her arms crossing like a shield. "You're too young to understand." I almost let that end it, almost let the distance grow back. But something inside me twisted, snapped. "Try me," I said quietly. Her eyes flicked up, locking on mine. The air shifted. She shook her head, but her lips trembled before she spoke. "Do you have any idea what it's like to be invisible in your own life? To sit across from someone who doesn't even notice if you've cut your hair, or if you've been crying, or if you—" She stopped, biting her lip hard. I stepped closer without realizing it. My chest ached like I'd been holding my breath for years. "I notice," I whispered. The words escaped before I could catch them. Her breath caught. For a second, neither of us moved. The clock ticked too loudly in the background. My heart pounded in my ears. Her eyes searched mine, wide and vulnerable. "Don't say things you can't take back." "I'm not." The distance between us was shrinking, whether by choice or gravity, I couldn't tell. Her perfume, faint and floral, wrapped around me. I could see the faint line at the corner of her mouth where her lipstick had smudged. Details I shouldn't have noticed but did. Her hand lifted slightly, hovering like she might reach for me, then hesitated midair. "Do you want this?" she asked, the question trembling, almost a plea. The room went so quiet I could hear the rain ticking against the window again. I opened my mouth, but no words came. My answer was already in my chest, loud and undeniable, but saying it would break something we couldn't repair. We stood there, breath mingling, eyes locked, suspended on the edge of a choice that would change everything. And then silence. Not an ending, not yet. Just the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on us, daring one of us to make the first move. Her question, "Do you want this?" still hung between us, vibrating in the silence. I was about to answer when the sharp buzz of her phone cut through the air again. This time she didn't reach for it. It buzzed once, twice, then stopped. But the name that flashed across the screen before it dimmed made my stomach twist. Not my friend's name. Someone else's. A man's name I didn't recognize. Her eyes flicked toward me, catching what I'd seen. For the first time, her composure cracked. She stepped forward, snatching the phone, clutching it tight against her chest like a secret. I blinked. "Who was that?" She didn't answer right away. Her lips parted, then closed, as though she were weighing how much truth I could handle. Finally, she sighed, her voice low, raw. "Before him, before your friend, there was someone else. I never told him. I couldn't." The words dropped like stones into still water, rippling through me. I should have felt relief that what we were teetering on wasn't unique to me, that maybe she had blurred lines before, but instead it stung. I didn't want to be another secret folded into her past. Why are you telling me this now? My voice was harsher than I meant. Because you matter. The words came fast, almost desperate. Because if we keep going, I can't let you think this is casual. Her eyes locked on mine, steady now. I see the way you look at me, and maybe I wanted to believe it was nothing. But it isn't. And if I don't tell you the truth, I'll hate myself for it. I froze. Every instinct screamed to step back, to protect myself. But my chest ached with something else. The raw honesty spilling out of her, like she'd been holding it in for years. Does he know? I asked quietly. She shook her head, the motion small, almost ashamed. No. And if he ever did? Her voice broke off, the rest unspoken. The room was unbearably heavy. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. She had just pulled me deeper into her world, and there was no way to climb back out without hurting someone. Before I could speak, another knock rattled the front door, louder, impatient. Her head whipped toward it, panic flashing across her face. I whispered, "Is it him?" She didn't answer. The knock came again. My pulse raced as I glanced toward the door, then back at her. She stood frozen, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Her eyes locked on me, waiting, terrified, expectant. And in that split second, I realized, whether it was him or someone else, this moment was about to change everything. I took a step toward her, lowering my voice to a rough whisper. "Tell me what you want me to do." Her lips parted, trembling, as the knocking thundered through the house again. The pounding on the door still shook the walls, but all I could see was her face. Pale, eyes wide, lips trembling with words she hadn't yet spoken. I whispered again, firmer this time. "Tell me what you want me to do." Her gaze darted toward the door, then back to me. The weight of years, regrets, secrets, loneliness, sat heavy in her expression. Finally, she shook her head. "Stay." The word was barely audible, but it hit me like a shout. I should have moved, should have gone to the door, but instead I stepped closer, close enough that I could see the shimmer of unshed tears in her eyes. The knocking stopped. Silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. Whoever it was had given up or decided to wait in the shadows. But neither of us cared. The storm had already moved inside the room. "You don't know what you're doing," she said, though her hand rose to meet mine halfway, her fingers brushing against my knuckles. "Maybe not," I whispered, "but I know what I feel." Her eyes closed for a second, and a quiet laugh escaped her lips, but it was broken, laced with pain. "You're too young to waste yourself on someone like me." "Don't say that." My voice came sharper than I meant. I swallowed, softening. "Don't decide for me." When she opened her eyes, the walls she'd kept up were gone. What stared back was raw, unguarded. A woman who wanted so badly to be seen, and a part of me that ached to be the one who saw her. "I can't promise you anything," she admitted, her voice barely steady. "Not forever. Not even tomorrow." I nodded because I already knew. "Then give me now." The silence that followed was unlike any before. Not heavy, not suffocating, alive, humming with something inevitable. Her hand slid fully into mine, warm, trembling. For a long moment, we just stood there, breathing the same air, letting everything unsaid thrum between us. Then she whispered, "If you stay, nothing will ever be the same." I leaned in, forehead almost touching hers. "Good." The word lingered, sealing something neither of us could take back. It wasn't a kiss, not yet. It wasn't a promise, not really. But it was the crossing of a line, the silent acknowledgement that what lived between us was real and dangerous, and too strong to keep buried any longer. Her breath shook against my cheek. My friend's name hovered unspoken in the air, the weight of betrayal pressing against us. But so did the truth neither of us could deny. She squeezed my hand once, firm, decisive. Then stay. And in that moment, for the first time, neither of us looked away. I stayed. Not because it was easy, not because it was right, but because in that moment walking away would have been the greater lie. The rain outside had stopped, leaving the world hushed. The silence in her kitchen wasn't suffocating anymore. It felt like a fragile truce between us and everything waiting on the other side of the door. She sat across from me, fingers still laced with mine. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The weight of what we'd done, or rather, what we'd chosen not to resist, hung between us. Finally, she broke the silence. "You know this can't be simple." I nodded. "I don't want simple. I just want honest." Her eyes searched mine, testing, almost daring me to look away. When I didn't, she exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath for years. For her, it wasn't just about me. It was about all the years she'd spent unseen, overlooked, tucked into the corners of someone else's life. For me, it wasn't just about her age or the risk. It was about finally stepping into something real, raw, and terrifyingly alive. We talked, quietly, cautiously, but honestly. She told me about the loneliness, the ways she had settled, the regret that clung to her nights. I told her about my restlessness, about always feeling like I was waiting for my life to start. And somewhere in that exchange, the fear loosened its grip. By the time I left her house, the world outside looked different. Brighter, sharper. My friend's name still echoed in my head, but so did hers, the sound of her voice when she whispered stay. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be clean. There would be choices to make, consequences to face. But what happened that night had shifted something permanent. We couldn't go back to pretending. She had seen me. I had seen her. And once that happens, nothing can erase it. Looking back now, it's not about whether we broke the rules or whether the world would ever approve. What mattered, what still matters, is that for once in both our lives we stopped hiding. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't perfect. But it was ours. And maybe that's the point. Love doesn't always come wrapped the way you expect. Sometimes it arrives late, complicated, flawed, but still worth choosing. Because at the end of it all, what's worse? Breaking a rule or living invisible?